Good evening and welcome to this information session on the Masters in Human Rights program at the Catholic University of America. The MA in Human Rights program is sponsored by the Institute for Human Ecology at Catholic University. The IHE is the nation's leading academic institute committed to identifying the economic, cultural, and social conditions vital for human flourishing. The MA in Human Rights is an incredible program, particularly because it approaches human rights from the perspective of the Catholic intellectual tradition. We are so glad that you're here to learn more about what makes this program so unique. My name is Suzanne Beecher, and I serve as legal counsel for the Alliance Defending Freedom. Prior to joining ADF, I worked with Professor Saunders on the MA program, so it is a great pleasure to be back here to discuss the program. Before we get started, I'd like to introduce Professor Saunders. Professor William Saunders, as most of you know, is the director of the MA in Human Rights program. He is also co-director of the Center for Religious Liberty at the Columbus School of Law, chair of the Religious Liberties Group for the Federalist Society, and the former president of the Fellowship of Catholic Scholars. Professor Saunders is a graduate of Harvard Law School who has been involved in issues of public policy, law, and ethics for over 30 years. He is a regular columnist for the National Catholic Bioethics Quarterly and has given lectures in law schools and colleges throughout the United States and the world. Professor Saunders' latest book, Unborn Human Life and Fundamental Rights, Leading Constitutional Cases Under Scrutiny, was published in 2019. As you can tell, Professor Saunders has a wealth of experience in human rights advocacy, so having him as director of the program is a huge part of what makes this degree program one of a kind. We are so excited to share more about this program this evening.
Thank you, Suzanne. I'm glad to be here with everybody. I do want to introduce Megan Witt, who is there on the screen with us. Wave, Megan. She is a graduate of the MA Human Rights program last year, who is now working with us actually in the program. So she knows the program inside and out. And Suzanne and I are going to have a conversation about the program, and then Megan's going to come back and answer some of your questions. Thanks, Megan.
Great. Thank you. I'm looking forward to answering everyone's questions. Thanks, Brendan.
Before we get started, I just want to give a quick overview of tonight's session, and then we'll dive into the questions. So to start with, as Professor Saunders said, we'll have a conversation about the program, why it's relevant in today's world, some information on the curriculum, professional advantages of the program, and more. You are welcome to submit your questions in the question and answer box at the bottom of your screen at any time during the presentation. And as Professor Saunders said, Megan will answer those at the end. For your awareness, this video will be available on the MA in Human Rights website, mahumanrights.com, following the presentation. Okay, so now we'll get started on the questions. So to start with, Professor Saunders, I want to ask you, what made you decide to start the MA in Human Rights program?
Thanks, Suzanne. I have been a lawyer in public policy in D.C. for 30 years or so. And my experience showed me that the most perceptive insight into public policy actually came from the Catholic Church. I was particularly influenced by the Pope, who I think is the greatest Pope of the last century, which is John Paul II, who has now been canonized, St. John Paul II. And if any of the viewers end up going to our webpage or mahumanrights.com, you will see very prominently there a photo of John Paul II. And I think for a lot of the people listening, I have to say I've been shocked, but awakened to the fact that many people much younger than me don't know John Paul II very well and haven't read John Paul II, which is too bad. But if you come in our program, that'll be remedied because we read John Paul II. But I say all that because part of the reason he was such a great pope is he stood at the intersection of history where the world was divided between the communists and the Western democracies. And in his teaching, he confronted the totalitarianisms of the Soviet Union, and he posited in opposition to that, the dignity of each human person. And when communism collapsed in 1989, he wrote a great encyclical 2 years later called Centesimus Annus, where he talked about the requirements to build a just society in new free societies that were free of totalitarianism. Mm-hmm. So as anybody listening who may be too young to have spent a lot of time thinking about the Soviet Union's collapse, I'm sure you're aware of anybody listening of the great threat posed to human freedom by the Chinese Communist Party and the People's Republic of China. So it's the same thing. I mean, human history repeats itself in every generation of people. So John Paul II's insights, those timeless insights, are still very relevant today. I will say a few more words about the woman who was there on the website in the photograph with him. Her name's Mother Teresa. Again, some of you may not know her, but I can tell you many, many years ago, I remember several people telling me they were just thrilled to be alive while she was still alive. And if some of you, I think, have probably heard that Mahatma Gandhi is called the father of India. Well, she went into the slums of Calcutta, took care of the people who were thrown away on the streets. And she was so beloved by the Indian people that when she died, she was called the mother of India. And I saw her funeral on television, and it was a national event. So but that's kind of historical. But what was so great is she has incredible insights, and again, to the dignity of the human person. Now, in all my public policy work, I've confronted all these issues, like I said, for 30 years, which ranging from issues like international issues like the Soviet Empire or the Communist Empire, to the questions of bioethics and the treatment of the human person and religious freedom, which the Catholic Church teaches is the very first freedom, the most important single freedom. So as I worked through those 30 years, it became clear to me that John Paul II, who called my attention before I became a Catholic, really was on to something. And like I said, the more I did public policy, the more I saw that the Catholic teaching was the most insightful. So the reason I started this program was I wanted to share that insight with as many people as possible, because obviously I'm not a child anymore. I'm not going to be around forever, but there are other people coming along who've got to take this thing forward, and I think learn from, like I said, the greatest pope of the last century. So I thought that a Master of Arts in Human Rights with a Catholic perspective to it was needed, and it is in fact unique. I think our program's unique. I don't think you can't get it anywhere else in the United States. We are unapologetically from a Catholic perspective. So somebody might say, why is that? There's two reasons. The kind of positive reason is because it's the best insight into human rights. The other side of that coin is because nobody else teaches it. If you take a human rights master's program anywhere else, you'll get a lot of secular talk and insights, which are valuable. But without the Catholic edition, I don't think they give you the rounded picture. And what I want to do is prepare people to go out into the public policy arena with a deep understanding of human rights. So that, in a nutshell, is why I started the program.
Great, thank you. So your remarks made me think of two other questions I want to follow up with on that. So you mentioned John Paul II and Mother Teresa as patrons of the program. And I know that there's another primary patron of the program. Can you tell the participants a little bit about that?
Yeah, depends on how you put it, but the patroness of our program is actually a saint from Sudan named BEECHER. If you look over my shoulder there, you'll see a poster of a film that we made about genocide that was going on in Sudan about 20 years ago called War and Faith in Sudan. And when I was over there making the documentary and working to end the genocide over there, I was introduced to her for the first time, and this is a picture of her. She's our patroness. She's from Sudan. She was taken as a slave as a little girl, but she ended up in Italy, and she became a saint. And all the people in Sudan and in Eastern Africa, and if people don't know where Sudan is, it's south of Egypt and north of Kenya. So it's over to the eastern half of the continent. It's a gigantic country, although it's smaller than it used to be because we were successful. And part of the political deal to end the genocide was the splitting of the country into two countries. So it's not as big as it used to be. But anyway, Bakita is a great saint for many reasons. As you can imagine, somebody that went through the kind of suffering she did, and she became a Catholic when she was kidnapped. She was just her faith would have just been kind of traditional, what's sometimes called animist or African traditional religion. But she became a Roman Catholic and a great saint. So if you come in our program, it is under the spiritual guidance of 5 saints. We mentioned 3. I'll mention the other 2. St. Thomas the Apostle, who had a tremendous influence in my own life. And if you don't know anything much about Thomas other than what the Bible says about him, which was he was doubting Thomas, and then he believed when Jesus came back. He, put his fingers in the wounds, and then he said for the first time in the Bible, called Jesus my God, which is great enough, but he actually took the faith to the continent of India. In the 1st century, he was martyred in the early 50s. And he's when I became a Catholic, he's my patron saint. And then the other one is St. John Fisher, who I'm sure everybody's heard of. Thomas More. He was the great lawyer and politician and Chancellor of England who stood up to Henry VIII because Henry VIII wouldn't let him not tell the, he forced him into a corner and he was martyred. And there's great movies about him, and he was a great, great man and great saint. St. John Fisher was his friend. St. John Fisher had been the confessor of Henry VIII's mother. St. John Fisher was elected the chancellor in perpetuity of University of Cambridge, which is even today rated as the second university in the entire world. And nobody had ever been chosen chancellor in perpetuity, but John Fisher was. And so he was a bishop. And when Henry VIII, and you all kind of know the story of Henry VIII, but the bottom line of the thing was whether he was married or not, depending on the Catholic teaching. All the bishops gave in and said Henry, even though the Pope had ruled that Henry remained married to his current wife, the bishops of England all gave in, and they all went with Henry, and that was when Anglicanism started, except for John Fisher. And so he's always been I've always admired him a great deal. As you can see, the one bishop who stayed faithful in the midst of persecution. So those are the 5 saints that are the saints of our program. And it's not, I don't know, people listening may think, well, it's all very interesting. What does it have to do with human rights? It has everything to do with human rights. Everything I've said about those 5 people, you can find so much about human rights and the teaching of human rights. And we will particularly study the teaching of John Paul II, but we will pay attention to the other 4 saints.
So the program is in great hands with those patrons. And like you said, not only their intercession is important, but also the example they set for what authentic human rights really looks like. You had touched on that in talking about the program as authentically Catholic. And I wanted to dive a little bit more into that and talk about how the program is interdisciplinary, because I think that kind of goes hand in hand with it being Catholic. It has a holistic understanding of the human person. And then there's also the practical aspects of human rights, and this program covers both. So can you talk a little bit about that?
I'm not sure I heard exactly. Are you asking me to
The
talk?
question, maybe got lost in there, just about the interdisciplinary nature of the program and what that means.
No, it's not your question, which is a good one. It's just a little bit, my speakers aren't working that well. I'm not sure what you said. You talking about the interdisciplinary nature and the advantages of being a Catholic university?
Yes, both, and like what it means that it's interdisciplinary.
Yeah, I think that this program, I'm not sure there's any university in America that could do this program better than Catholic University. For people that are watching from around the world, if you don't know that much where Catholic University is, it's in Washington, D.C. And of course, at this time in history, the U.S. is certainly one of the two most dominant nations in the world. It has the most influence, political, economic influence, which is to our advantage because this is where a lot of the important public policy issues are discussed, and we'll be right in the middle of them. As Suzanne can attest, one of the things we do is we have a series of meetings throughout the fall semester with people involved in public policy here in Washington, D.C., and people involved in human rights. And you can't have those meetings anywhere else because of the importance of Washington in American politics, all the human rights groups have offices here. So in my 30 years, I have a pretty much vast network of contacts and people I've worked with and people who've done things like started the Victims of Communism Museum. Is a personal friend of mine, and we will sit down with them and talk about things. And you'll learn as a potential student about the kind of things you can do. I know that some of you are kind of interested in the degree, but you're wondering, what can I do with that degree? Well, one of the things of that fall semester is to help you discover some new ideas. I mean, you will certainly meet people doing things you've never thought of before, and that hopefully will start to give you some ideas. It may spark something in your own mind about what you'd like to do or what you might like to do, or you might make a connection with somebody who, a year later, you're back in touch with them, or maybe somebody who needs an employee. I've had students hired from the meetings we have had in the fall. They've led to jobs. So being in Washington, D.C. is very important for any human rights program. Being a Catholic university is very important because we have some of the leading scholars in the whole world here at Catholic University, and they're all people committed to the Catholic vision of the human person. And our program is interdisciplinary. So part of it is you have classes with me, but you also have classes with leading thinkers in philosophy, theology, politics, law, and other courses, so that you get, my aim is for you to understand human rights in a deep way, not in a shallow way. So you get these different perspectives. And again, just to use an analogy that was often used when they talked about the Gospels, the four Gospels, because why do we need four Gospels? Why not just one Gospel? And the fathers in the second century said we need it because it's like a diamond, and you get different perspectives on the same diamond. If I'm across the room and I'm looking at it, I see it slightly differently than if I'm sitting here or I'm sitting over there. So you get the philosophy, you get the law, you get the canon law, you get political theory, you get theology. So you understand human rights in more depth. You also get some history as well. So I don't think there's a better collection of professors anywhere almost all of my professors in my program are fellows of the Institute for Human Ecology. That's intentional because they're great scholars and great teachers.
Yeah, that's great. So they're getting the why with the theology and philosophy, and then the how of human rights with the why and the political theory and all of that. But I do just want to underscore how neat it is. Bill was talking about the meetings that the students have with human rights organizations. Like he said, that's so beneficial because it helps you first to make connections, also to learn about the different areas of human rights people can work in. And there's also some internship opportunities during the year, which we can talk a little bit more about later with those organizations. You talked about the meetings, Professor Saunders, as a great way for students to connect with human rights organizations and experts. I know another really exciting part of the program is the Incredible Advisory Board. Can you talk about who is on the advisory board and what that means?
Yeah, thanks. I think we have a spectacular advisory board. Again, I'm shocked, and I should be shocked because I should have realized it, but people in succeeding generations maybe don't know who some of these people are, which is crying shame. Because I have an advisory board that I don't think can be matched anywhere. I want to run through some of them. One is Marianne Glendon. She is the most foremost legal scholar in human rights in the United States, maybe in the world. She was the U.S. ambassador to the Vatican. She was also the first leader of a Vatican delegation to an international conference in history. She's written the books that we read in the course. She understands what human rights are all about and the importance of. There's an international tradition, in particular, what they call the modern human rights tradition, which is what came out of the Second World War. She is the great scholar of that. There's Robert George at Princeton University, who is considered the leading public intellectual of his generation. And he has the James Madison program and the other institutes at Princeton, which trained generations of people around the world, as well as in the United States. Then we have John Keown, who's a professor at Georgetown University, who's the world's leading authority on assisted suicide, euthanasia, and also just war theory. We have John DiIulio, who's a great scholar of politics and history at University of Pennsylvania. We have Helen Alvarez, she was the spokesperson for the U.S. Bishops' Conference on pro-life matters. She is a leading professor now on family law in the United States. Just written a very interesting book on religious liberty. We have Tom Farr, who was a head of the State Department Office on International Religious Freedom, who set up a institute called the Religious Freedom Institute, which advocates for religious freedom. As I mentioned before, it's no surprise to have people who work on religious freedom because the Catholic Church teaches that religious freedom is the first freedom. We also have Father Kevin Flannery, who, for any of the philosophy peoples, majors or whatever listening in, he is one of the world's absolute top experts on Aristotle. And, if in case you think that's too esoteric, we just had him give our human rights lecture last year. And we're adding, we have two other people I want to mention. One is Monsignor Anthony Frontero, who was a diplomat at the UN, at the United Nations for the Holy See, who I knew. I was a delegate to the UN for President George W. Bush for the United States. And Monsignor Frontero and I worked together while we were at the UN, and then he worked for the Vatican dicastery on peace and justice. So he was a diplomat who went around the world. So he has tremendous diplomatic experience. And I just will pause there because, again, this isn't just ivory tower people with theories. Glendon, Robert George, Helen Albury, Tom Farr, Monsignor Frontero, myself, we've been involved in the actual doing of human rights. So it's not just human rights as a thought experiment, it's human rights in practice trying to help people. And we're about to add to my advisory board Juan Carlos Riofrio, who is a professor of law from Ecuador. We aim for our program to be international. We want international students to come because we want you to be advocates in your country. You can make a tremendous difference standing up for the truth and a proper understanding of human rights in your country, whether it's America or not. And I will mention, just while I'm talking about that this year's student class is incredibly diverse, where we have a priest from Nigeria, a woman from Chad, two young men from the Middle East. So you're welcome in the program. You just have to be interested in learning about the Catholic perspective on human rights.
That's great. Yeah, that's an amazing representation of countries and such a remarkable advisory board, which is a really special part of the program. And like you said, it's an involved advisory board, so it really makes a difference that those people are there and are accessible. We are coming up close to the 30-minute mark, so I want to turn a little more to nuts and bolts question. So can you talk about the length of the program and give some examples of the requirements for graduation?
Yeah, I do want to say that, like you said, there is I just want to say one thing about the advisory board. If you do know who these people are and you realize how lucky you are to have any connection and interaction with them, you will get that in the program. One of the things that we do in my course in the spring is sometimes these professors, like Professor George, who's considered one of the world's experts on natural law, may teach a class on natural law, or we will bring in Monsignor Frontero to talk about how do you actually do diplomacy on human rights on behalf of the Holy See, which obviously is trying to do it from the Catholic perspective. So the way the program is structured is, in a sense, I was going to say ideally, but I don't know if it's ideal or not. But one way you can do it is 5 courses, 2 semesters each. That's 10 courses, so you can get the master's in 1 year. About half our students nowadays are going part-time, which means they take 2 or 3 courses a semester and finish up in 2 years. Is that, Suzanne, did I answer your question, or is there more there I left out?
Yeah, no, that totally answers the question. Then another more practical question is, can you talk about who would benefit from the program? Is there an ideal candidate, or what are some different background profiles that would be a good fit for the program?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Oh, can you talk about what type of applicant would be a good fit for the program?
The benefits of the program?
Who should apply?
Well, anybody who wants, let me put it this way. So, again, you can do a lot of different things with this degree. You could go to law school, which some of my students do. And I think later tonight you may meet one of them who was in the program last year with Megan, and he's now in law school. Or you can go to graduate school, which some of my students are doing. One of them from last year's class is pursuing a PhD actually at Catholic University. or you can go to work at a nonprofit organization, or you can go to work in the U.S. government. This week, we're going to have some meetings with the students with two people who do human rights for the U.S. Congress. They're staff people. You can learn about that and get a job doing that. You can go to work for a bishop's conference or a particular bishop in the Peace and Justice Office. So if you're interested in any of those things, you should apply. I also want to say that people who want to go to law school, which is obviously fine. I'm a lawyer. I like lawyers. Don't delude yourself that you will have the opportunity in law school to reflect on any of these important issues like we will in this class. That's not what law school is about. So if you take a human rights course in law school, it is not considering the theological, philosophical, political theory ideas of human rights. It's about learning about legal guarantees of human rights, which is important, but it's not the whole picture. So if you actually think you might want to go to law school, I actually think the program's perfect for you, because you will be prepared going into law school to understand these issues even better. Actually, one thing I want to mention before we go off, because I started, this is another extremely important person in the program who I haven't mentioned, but, I started by talking about what John Paul II did, standing up to the Soviet totalitarian empire. And we have in the program someone who has been nominated for the Nobel Prize and who is one of the leading people in the world standing up to the Communist Party of China's totalitarian empire. And this is his book. It's called The Barefoot Lawyer. His name is Chen Guangqin. He is an incredible human being who escaped communist China, even though he's blind, which is an incredible story. If you want to delve into it, you should buy his book on Amazon. Or if you're one of my students, we give you a book. But he is there to help us understand the challenges posed to human rights by authoritarian regimes in the world today. And there is no other place in the world where you can study with a guy like him or with him. This is it. And the struggle with communist China, not with the Chinese people, but with communism, is something that's going to define your lives. However old you are right now, it's going to define your lives for the next 10 or 15 years. And you can learn about its strengths and weaknesses by somebody like that.
Yeah, that's amazing. All right, we should probably wrap up, but is there anything else that you want to share before we hand it back to Megan to answer the questions from the Q&A box?
I can't think of anything. I think Megan and Vincent will have some things to say. I don't know if you have anything you want to say, Suzanne. Suzanne was, my right-hand person for quite a while. You know the program. Anything else you think they should know?
I think I would just underscore some of your points that it really is a unique program, particularly the way that it connects the students with human rights experts, and that it combines both the foundational, philosophical, and theological truth necessary for understanding human rights with the practical application in law, in the nonprofit and other sectors. But yeah, I think that's all I would add. You've covered so much. This has been a really fun conversation. And as you can tell, I'm a big supporter of the program, so always happy to be here and discuss it.
You can always send us an email.
Yes, and Megan will put some information about how to reach out and contact us or her with more specific questions. But for now, we'll go off screen and hand it back to her. Thank you so much and have a great night.
Good evening, and thank you all so much for joining us at this info session. As Professor Saunders had mentioned, my name is Megan Witt. I am the current student program specialist with the Institute for Human Ecology. I am also a previous graduate of the master's program. I graduated last year. I can't say enough good things about it, but we'll go ahead and answer some questions. So feel free to put questions in the answer Q&A box. We will start with, would it be helpful to have a background in theology? I think that the program gives enough of a background that, it's easy to follow all of the theology courses. But it is always good to just have a little bit of awareness, but nothing is required.
And I will
Um,
say, having had a little bit of a background in theology when I went into the program. Also, I'm Vincent. Hi. I can give a more formal introduction in a minute if you want. But having had a little bit of a background in theology, I will say that is very helpful in framing everything contextually. So it does provide some good context. But like Megan said, they do a very good job of providing the foundation. So even if you don't have a background, then you're still golden.
Vincent, if you could turn your camera on, we can see.
Yeah, it wasn't letting me for some reason. I don't know why.
Oh,
I tried to turn it on. It was not letting me. I don't know.
great. Well, everyone, this is Vincent Schifiano, another graduate of the master's program. Vincent, why don't you go ahead and give a little bit of a background?
Yeah, sure. So again, like Megan said, my name is Vincent Schifiano. I graduated from the program in 2023, so just this past May. I'm currently a law student, first year law student at the University of Kansas. So go Jayhawks. Right, that's us. And now I'm studying law. I'm hoping to do a lot of religious freedom stuff. Pro-life stuff. Most of the same stuff that you learn in this program, honestly. I got most of those interests from the program. About me. The most important things about me are that I have a wife and baby. They're currently in the other room taking a nap, and they're the pride and joy of my life. And yeah, that's me. Is there anything else you would want to know, Megan, or just that's me?
That's great. I am going to go ahead and put in the chat box the website that you can go to in order to learn a little bit more about the program, specific courses that you're able to take. And then I will also go ahead and put my email. And you are more than welcome to email me with any questions. I will say there are a few questions about financial assistance. So that's going to be more on a case-by-case basis. So if you'd like more information about your specific case, feel free to email me at wit@cua.edu. Similar case with the English exam requirements. That is going to be specifically through our international office. So I'm also happy to answer any specific questions about that if you'd like to send me an email. Here is another question. So Catholic bioethics. We had the privilege of taking a bioethics course during this program. The specific courses that you take are going to vary depending on the year, what's available. But the bioethics course was personally one of my favorites. Vincent, I don't know if you agree. There are so many great
I do
courses.
agree. It
So
was pretty great.
it's hard to pick. But I definitely think if you're interested in a bioethics kind of field, this program would be great for that because it does give a little bit more of a well-rounded perspective. So you'll get that kind of political theory, you'll get the legal underpinnings of kind of the bioethics sphere, the theological, the philosophical. So if you're interested in bioethics, I definitely think that it would be a good path. Next question. Do students in the program have the opportunity to work part-time while they're taking classes? Yes, and that is another thing that's kind of worked out on a case-by-case basis. Professor Saunders really likes to be aware of everything that's on the students' plates so that he can really help and make sure that you're thriving and you're not overwhelmed, that things are going well. So the next question is for Vincent.
Has the program had successful professional students with full-time active positions? Yeah, I think that kind of goes to what Megan was talking about. Yeah, we've definitely had students of all ages, all areas of life, all professions. I mean, just in our cohort, we had sorry, just checking this. In our cohort, we had students. Megan and I were right out of college, and we had students that were in their 30s, and we've had students beyond that. So we have students in all phases of life. The only thing I'll say is, the program, if you do the 1 year option, right? If you do what we did with doing it in 1 year, it is very intensive, right?
Mm-hmm.
It would not work with a full-time position. That said, like Professor Saunders said in the video, about half of our students are at this point part-time, right? Where you can finish the program in 2 or 3 years or 5 years or however long you want. Saunders works that out with people. And that can be compatible with people with more full-time positions, particularly if they're in the Washington, D.C. Area. And yes, rock chalk, indeed. I've been getting very into the KU culture here, and beating Oklahoma this past Saturday was a really big deal for that. So, rock chalk, indeed.
Good. Yeah, so I think that is another thing that's really unique about the program is Professor Saunders really genuinely cares about the students and really genuinely wants to make sure that you are enjoying your time and you are really thriving in the program. And so he is available to the students whenever needed, whether a personal issue, whether an academic issue. He's always available to help and always available to answer any questions, which I found to be a really crucial part of the program. I was asked to share my email, so I put it in the chat box. Just let me know if you aren't able to see. Oh, actually, here we go. Okay, so that's the website and my email. So feel free to email me whenever. I'm more than happy again to answer any kind of more specific questions like scholarships, financial aid, English proficiency tests. Yeah, just feel free to email me. Is the program free of cost? No, the program is not free of cost. It is kind of your normal graduate program. There are a lot of available scholarships. So, depending on need, depending on situations, Professor Saunders takes those kind of case by case. Great. So those are all of the questions. Does anyone have any more questions we could answer? Anything else? And I also do just want to mention, as a student of the program, I can't encourage enough how unique it is in the way that you get such a well-rounded perspective of human rights. I don't think that any other university or any other human rights program can say that they truly are able to educate in theology, in philosophy, in political theory, and also in the legal basis for all of these different concepts. What is the best international English exam? Yeah, feel free to email me, and I can send you a couple resources for that, and we can kind of chat on what might be best for you. Thank you, Brian, for coming. Well, if there are no more questions, I'll wait a little bit longer. But yeah, thank you all so much for coming and for your interest in the program. We're really excited for this next year of cohorts. I love the community that it builds, from the past years to the future years. I know it's a very strong community. The GRE requirements. So that's another kind of case by case basis. It's you can request that it be waived, but that's going to depend on a few different circumstances that I would be more than happy to discuss over email.
So, like for example, I didn't even have a GRE score. I used the score I took to get into law school which is a totally different test. So Professor Saunders is very he'll work with you on things.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to echo everything Megan has said up to this point. Everything, this program really is life changing. And I think honestly, before we go, like the last thing I'll say is just honestly, the best part of the program was the community aspect of it. I guess it was 5 of us that were the main cohort. We always talked about like, we're trauma bonded for life. Like, we all just went, it's such a sort of academically grueling program, right? We get exposed to so much difficult coursework and we have to learn about such heavy subjects. We all grow so close together, right? To this day, we all talk. I called Megan up just the other day, chat about something, right? And, we shared in each other's life's joys and sorrows, right? And I think that aspect of it is really unique that you don't get in a lot of programs, right? Where you have 4 classmates, right? For all of your classes over the course of a year. You don't get that very many places. Yeah, it is absolutely life-changing. And I want to second that everyone has said.
We have one more question. From the perspective of a nurse, how might the program benefit you? So I think that kind of brings us back to the bioethics question. I think this program being so well-rounded, you do get exposed to the bioethic, the medical ethics, those sort of ideas and concepts. But you also get exposed to kind of what is a human person? What is it to, encourage happiness and to encourage flourishing of a human person, both from a philosophical perspective and also from a legal perspective. And so I think, as a nurse, as a doctor, as a lawyer, as a philosopher, really as anything, this program can expose you to things that you wouldn't be exposed to, say, going to more of a professional school or, something more focused on a specific sort of idea. So yeah, I think you can make an impact with this program through a variety of different ways. But like Vincent mentioned, like I mentioned, the network that you build from the program is incredible. And kind of the knowledge that you gather, I think really truly is unmatched from any other program. So we will end with that question. Thank you all so much for your wonderful questions, and for coming tonight. And again, feel free to email me, look at the website. If you have any questions at all, my inbox is always open. And I look forward to hearing from you all. And Vincent, thank you so much for joining us tonight. It was a pleasure to have you. Great to see you.
Back.
And good luck with law school. Thank you all. Have a great rest of your night.